Elon Musk wants to put a man on Mars by 2025. But I think we can do it in a little under 2 hours. If, of course, you can, let the CG part slide. Hello, my name is Andrew Price, and welcome to another Blender Guru tutorial. Don't mind the sound, that is my cat. In this video, we're going to be making Mars, as you can see right here. So it's a very in-depth tutorial. This might be my most in-depth tutorial. I almost didn't do a tutorial on it because I was so not up to recording 2 hours worth of stuff, but here we are. So in the video, we're going to learn all about creating large-scale environments. And yeah, it's very long, so I'm going to give you some chapter marks right now. So this is part one of a two-part series. So part one covers we're going to start with the basic scene layout, the material and lighting next. Then we're going to be adding in some rocks and then creating the dirt shader. So that's all for part one. Feel free to click any of these links here, by the way, and that'll jump you through to that chapter mark. Part two, which is the next video, is we're going to then start with placing some larger rocks into the scene, adding some broken rocks around it to make it look more realistic, using a special trick called the AO ground trick to make it look like sweeping dirt is crowding around each rock, which is kind of cool. Then we're going to be creating the backdrop, quite simply, really, and then finally doing some final compositing, adding in the dust, atmospheric haze, color grading, that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of stuff here. That's why I've given you all these little chapter marks here so that you can jump to those spots. Now, quick note, we are going to be using the Rock Essentials. So the Rock Essentials is a product put out by us, Blender Guru, and we designed it basically for scenes exactly like this. So you can create realistic outdoor environments. So if you haven't seen the Rock Essentials, you can click here and that'll actually take you to the video so you can check out the Rock Essentials if that's your thing. So yeah, it's a pack of rock. It's got brushes in it. It's got cliffs. It's got a whole bunch of different stuff. You can check it out there. Now, I do understand some people aren't a big fan of tutorials where it uses a product which you have to pay. You have to pay for. I totally get that. It's I know you want free stuff. Who doesn't like free stuff? But look, we've made this product so that we can keep Blender Guru running. And I like making tutorials where things actually move pretty quickly. So that's why we use pre-made asset packs like this so that you can, make nice looking scenery. So, check it out there. Otherwise, let's begin. All right, so here we are. Brand new scene open up in Blender. The most daunting task of all, which is, starting with nothing. So go ahead and delete the default cube, and we're just going to start laying out the basic scene. So I'm just going to add in a plane, position the camera front and center on that plane. And yeah, as I mentioned, you just want to start positioning the camera and positioning the ground and everything. To sort of lay out the scene, because otherwise you start getting into the detail and things get messed up. So at this stage, what I like to do is add in something of scale as a reference so that I know that what I'm working with, because this is completely foreign to us. This could be 1 meter or it could be 100. So you could either add in a cube, which is by its default height, it's about, if you switch to metric units, which you should, it's 2 meters. 2 meters high, which is about roughly the size of a human. So I usually just sort of make him about that sort of look. And this is the size of a human. So now looking at the scene, I can sort of get a feel for what I'm looking at. So if this is an astronaut standing here, this is, the size of that. So this ground here, you can see is 25 meters across. So I'll just scale it up just slightly bigger than what's there. Now, I already know what I want in this scene, but if you don't, you just want to sort of play with ideas, that's totally fine as well. You don't want to have a completely flat plane for any ground at all. Every, ground surface in life is all sort of, it's bumpy all over. So what we're going to do is just subdivide this 100 times, 100 times. And then if you go and you hit the O key on your keyboard, then you can start using proportional fall off with the scroll wheel and start making slopes like that. So what I'll do, I'll just position this here. I'll go into rule of thirds mode for the camera so that I've got something to work off of. So this is about where I want my my astronaut to be standing. So he's just a little block there right now. Okay, I'm just trying to think. Okay, because I want him to be standing on top of a hill. So all right, let's just do that. Let's just make a little hill. So I'll just bring that up to be about there. I want there to be sort of a, maybe another sort of slight hill around this sort of corner. So something sort of like that, and then I want there to be like a little ditch or like a pool sort of down there. Now you can see that this there's a grid floor there, which is showing up when I pull that down. So I'll just turn that off, just so that it's easier to work with here. Okay, pull that down. Okay, there we go. So as you can see, like honestly, you don't want to get paralyzed with this sort of thing, because like when you're starting something like this, it's so easy, like, oh, I don't know if I'm going to do the right thing yet. You know, what if this isn't right? Maybe there's going to be there, and you start to procrastinate. That's when you end up on Facebook and Reddit and doing stuff other than what you actually love to do, really, which is to make art. So just keep it flexible, like Play-Doh, and yeah, just try and just until you see some interesting shapes that you like. So there we go. So I'll have my astronaut just sort of standing up on there, and that's fine. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create another plane. So I'll just add one right here underneath that one, and I'm going to scale it up, and I'm going to move it out. And this is going to be the background. So this is my foreground here, right in front of the camera. And then sort of up where near the astronaut, that's what you call the middle ground. And then over here, this is going to be the background. Now, why don't we just scale up this plane here? Well, the thing is that things in the foreground need more detail than things in the background. So we're going to be adding a little bit of detail to the plane here later, maybe. In which case, if we wanted to have that detail there, we'd have to make the same amount of detail for the stuff in the background, which is just a waste. So by having a separate plane way in the background there that doesn't need as much detail, we can save render time, basically. I know it looks awkward from the top-down view. It looks ugly, but nobody ever sees it from the top, so it doesn't matter. If you look at like all the best artists, yeah, you'll see that their scenes are all just hacked together, just pieces on other pieces, and doesn't make any sense, but the render looks lovely. Now, you'll see that in the camera view, you can't see that plane there. And that's because by default, Blender's default camera clips out at 100 meters or 100 Blender units. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this to 1 kilometer, 1000. And now you can see it there in the background. So I could increase the height of that a little bit, but really I guess what I need to do is just, because I'm just thinking about the scene here, so if this isn't making sense to you what I'm doing or why I'm doing it, I'm just thinking about the end result. And I know that I want there to be a little alien artifact there somewhere in the background, so I might maybe just tilt that camera down there a little bit, at which point maybe I would decrease this slope there, or this slope over here. Actually, yeah, that looks kind of cool, having a little sort of a ditch. The other thing that can look compositionally cool is like having clear depths, so like a foreground, a middle ground, and a background. So like the middle, like you want there to be like a clear separator. So if you add like a ditch sort of between it, it's sort of like it's a layered sort of scene. Maybe I'll make that one sort of sloped like that. Try and get sort of a flowing sort of feel. So it's like the camera, you start on the right-hand side, you follow up the slope to the left, and then you go down to the artifact over there on the right-hand side. So, you know, honestly, I don't know what I'm doing now. This could look terrible. I've made this scene now 5 times. 3 times to practice for this tutorial. One of them I was recording the tutorial, and then I realized afterward I didn't have my microphone turned on. After 5 years of doing Blender Guru, I still make stupid mistakes like that. Anyway, it is what it is. Okay, that looks fine to me. So, yeah. Okay, if I wanted to, I want to make this scene look really big. I'll scale this out so that it's like hitting the end of our camera clipping value there of 1 kilometer, which might be cool, you know. The grandiose the scene looks, the more, I don't know, pro you look as an artist. If you can pull it off, like, yeah, it's just like small scenes are, you know, they're easier to make, and it takes a lot more work to make a large screen, large sort of scale scene work. Anyway, all right, now we've got this basic sort of layout here. Now I want to get the basic lighting. So I'm going to add in a sun lamp right here, and I'll just rotate this so that it's shining across. Now, the reason I want to go like rather than just straight down is that, you know, straight down lighting like that makes everything look flat. If you go, if you make the sunlight more angular, what happens is that it highlights more of the geometry. Like you see more of the shape of the objects. Like you can see the difference there. If I make it point completely down like that, you can see the plane becomes completely white. Whereas if you rotate it, you can see you start to see more of the forms. Now this might not seem like much now, but when we have rocks on it, shadows are going to be a big part of it. So again, we can change all this later, but just getting the basic feel for it right now. I'll also add in the sky, which I know, looking off of my reference photos, let me bring in those reference photos. It's always this default yellow color in every Mars photo that I've seen. Or actually, some of them have this like blue color, which is why some of them sort of look like Earth. But anyway, most of them, it's usually this yellowy mustard color. So I'll just go with that, make it a yellowy mustard color here. At this stage, I tend to think like progress is better than details. Like the faster you can move in this initial setting up stage, the better off I think you'll be overall. Maybe turn that down a little bit. I'll turn up the sunlight. Let's go 10 on that. Okay, cool. Now the ground looks pretty white, but we'll get into the materials now. Yeah, let's do the materials now. Okay, so obviously we want there to be some texture to the ground. So for that, I am going to use, shock horror, I'm going to use Polygon. Polygon.com. This is obviously my website. It's like a texture website, but it has all the maps provided, like the normal maps, the specular maps, overlays, patterns, and things like that. It's something that we're working on. It's the future. So I'm going to type in ground. Let's just see the textures that we have here. Okay, cool. There's a little bug at the moment where it doesn't automatically load the rest. There we go. Okay, cool. So looking at these, I've honestly, like when you first start a scene, like it's just a matter of experimentation. I've tried big rocks like these. I've tried sand, and you just find things that you like. I tried crack surfaces. Ones that I actually thought worked pretty well for this scene was, actually, I tried this one last, but I might actually go with this one. Let's try this one. Ground clay. Now, the way this site works is it's got all the different maps here, so the displacements, the normal maps, all that kind of thing, and you can download them all with one click. But I usually just download the maps that I actually need. So in this case, I'm just going to start with the albedo, which is the same as the diffuse map, but with the shadows removed. And I'll just download the 3K version of that. You want to try and go with the smallest size that you actually need, because if you just, like a lot of artists just go straight for like the maximum resolution, but that actually costs you in rendering because it uses up more RAM. So if you find that your graphics card is always crashing when it goes to rendering, it's because you're using too high textures. And honestly, at this scale, like this is just on the surface, it's going to be like scaled down anyway. You wouldn't probably even see 1K. Anyway, I'm just going with 3 out of habit, I guess. Anyways, cool. So I've downloaded those 2 textures. So I'm going to load these in right now. Let's go new material. Make sure I've got the ground selected. Yes, I do. And let's just load these in. So I'll make this go to the left-hand side. What is that? Oh, that's right. Okay, when it's in full screen mode, it doesn't let you. But yeah, I like to drag it over from Chrome, just in there like that, and then drag over the normal map as well. Just easier than hunting through all the different things in the file browser in Blender. So I'll connect this up to there. Now you'll see that although it's changed color, the texture, there's no actual texture. And that is because it hasn't been UV unwrapped yet. So what I'll do is I'll split the view here. And in edit mode, I'm just going to select U, project from view, bounds. And the reason I say bounds is just so that it automatically fits it to the floor. Otherwise, it sort of makes it a small thing and you have to scale it up. But anyways, that's the quickest and easiest way to UV unwrap a ground surface. So there we go. Now, the scale of that obviously looks horrible. Looks like we're looking at a bread loaf up close with a microscope. So what I'll do is I'll add in a texture coordinate node here, and then a mapping node, and then connect UV to there, and then from the mapping to the image texture, and we'll set this to 35. Again, I'm just going off base what I know of. Like generally, here's a little tip for you. Generally, when you're working with an image texture, especially for like ground surfaces, we tend to scale them like not enough. Like most artists would go like 10 or, you know, or maybe 15 or something like that. I try to think like go one more than what you would have. So it's like I stopped at like 30, but yeah, I think we're just bad at guessing the scale of things generally. And textures are generally like a small section of Earth. So in order to make them scale over a surface like this, you have to really scale it up. So anyway, I'm going 35 and that looks pretty good. We want to give it some bump, of course, so we'll connect up our normal map here. With any normal map, want to make sure that you're using non-color data or else it will not work. I repeat, it will not work. Connect that to the normal map node and then connect that to the diffuse. You'll need to make sure that you use the same scale as the color map, and there we go. So that's the basic ground covered there. Now here's a little tip. The color of the ground here, if you're working in a large scene with a lot of objects, which is what we're doing, it helps if you can go off a sort of a reference, like try and get everything down to its real raw color. And real soil is actually very dark. Now you can actually get these values online. If you type in, I found this, so it's called the Physically Based Rendering Encyclopedia, or just type in PBR Encyclopedia, and it is the first one that comes up. It's on the Polycount forum here, and then it's like, yeah, it's there. But anyways, way down here at the bottom here, it's got these color charts, like these reference charts, which are put together by a few different companies, production companies. And yeah, down here you can see one that says bare soil, and the base color intensity for that is generally around about 0.13, which is crazy. So like if you were to have a look at this, like that would mean that the color of the soil should be around about here, which is so super dark, which is crazy. Now you don't have to be locked into that, but just know that that's sort of what the soil color generally should be. So I think generally what you should be doing is increasing your sun lamp so that you can actually see the soil properly there. Anyway, so I'll connect in the color here. And actually, you know what? Looking at this texture, there's very little color variation across it. It's mostly bumps, and that's really what this is doing for us. We've already got a normal map, which is the bumps. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to delete this color map and just use this color right here, and all the texture is just going to come from the bump. Yeah, let's do that. That looks pretty cool, actually. I like it. Now, so for the color of the soil, okay, so here's the thing. The first time I made the scenes, I went specifically off the reference photos. Now here's the thing. Mars, if you actually look at real reference photos, the soil isn't that red. Like all of these photos here, like these could be taken on Earth. It just looks like yellowish soil. In fact, some of them look like they have been taken on Earth, actually. Like the lighting is quite clear. Like all this stuff. Like that's just, there's nothing really unique about that soil there. So I went and followed, you know, the colors that you can see here. Just went with a sort of a grayish, yellowy color. And then at the end of it, it didn't actually look like Mars. Because in our head, when we think of Mars, we think of red dirt. And I think the primary reason for that is because of this photo here, which was from 2005, I think, which shows very, very red soil, and maybe this one here. Now, I do believe that the Mars soil is slightly red, but I don't think it's that red. I think there's possibly some color balance issues here. Like it wasn't, maybe the white balance wasn't set, possibly. I don't know. I'm not calling NASA out, but the rest of their photos look yellow. Anyway, all this is to say, this is where you have to use your creative license and go with what you think feels right. I want the end result to actually look like Mars. So I'm going to paint the picture that people imagine in their head. Even though the real Mars is probably more like that, I'm going to go with more like this, a little bit reddish color. So there we go. Okay, cool. So we got the soil done. Now what we're going to do, actually, first of all, I'll just do the exact same thing. Well, let's just go here, subdivide our background. Project from view bounds, and then just give it the exact same material. Okay, there we go. So we've got our basic scene set up now. Good. go ahead and save it whilst you can. All right, well done. You've now completed the most boring part of any large-scale environment, which is, laying it out and then setting up the ground material. So now that that's done, we can get into some fun stuff, which in the case of Mars is rocks. So I'm going to go to a new layer over here, and I'm going to start using the rock essentials. So I'm going to go to File, Append, and I will find the rock essentials file right here. So the rock essentials, if you don't know, just a quick overview, this is what it looks like on the product page. It's a group of assets and tools and things for creating rocky type environments. So there's brushes, there's ground textures, but the biggest and most important one of all is the individual rocks. So there's 267 of them included, and they're separated into different categories right here. So the one that we're going to use for Mars is in the mountain collection. And inside the mountain ones, you've got two types. We've got large and we've got medium. We're actually going to use both, but I'm going to start with the medium. I'm going to go to Group, and then just select that one group there, and then hit Append. So this is what the rocks look like. And actually, we should probably move the sun lamp to its own layer, just so that we can start looking at how the rocks look with the actual scene lighting. There we go. Now, they look pretty low res, but as anybody who has the rock essentials knows, you can tweak it by turning up you can turn on high resolution mode, which basically enables an extra subsurf modifier with extra displacement as well, making it look a lot more high res. But in our case, we're actually going to leave it off. So the reason for that is that we're going to use these rocks here across, use it as a particle system across this plane here. So with the plane selected, I'm going to go to particle mode, select new, hair, and then select advanced. And then down here, the most important one we're going to use is underneath render. So we're going to change it from hair, obviously, to group. And then here we can just select the one group which exists in the scene, which is the mountain medium rocks. Okay, so there we go. We've got them cast across the plane here. Now, one thing you might note if you zoom right in is that the rocks are at a funny angle. In fact, they're rotated at 90 degrees to the camera, which is kind of odd. Now, you can enable rotation, but that doesn't seem to fix it. Now, there are rotation settings right here. You can go to normal mode. You can try all these different ones. None of them seem to flip them the correct way. It's very odd. You can use like a global Y, but then what happens is that on a sloped surface, it doesn't rotate them according to the surface that it's on, so they still come out like at a funny angle. And then if you want to use the other thing is you want to be able to make each one individually rotated to the others. Otherwise, you can start to see them lining up. So anyways, this is what you have to do. And this is, I actually posted this question on Twitter asking if there was any other solution other than this, but this is what everybody does. And if you ask me, it is completely stupid. And I can't wait until it is fixed one day. But basically, you want to set it to normal, like that. And then over here with the rocks, you want to rotate them 90 degrees. Don't know why, but we do. And then when you've done that, you'll see that they are now all on the plane the correct way. Again, as I said, I really don't like that, but that's just the way it is. Now you can use this rotation value here, and they will be each individually rotated to the other. So you shouldn't be able to see the same rock twice, at least not easily. And if you can sort of change the seed value settings there. But anyway. So I'll change a few more things of the particle settings. So I'm going to go to random mode, which, although it doesn't look like anything's changed, if you use a lot of particles, like if we went with 100,000 of these rocks, that is a lot. maybe 10,000. If you're in jittered mode, you can see that they actually, like there's a pattern. It's like it's following a grid pattern. So random just breaks it up and makes it random. Yay, go figure. So the other one I want to change is the underneath render. No, not underneath render. Underneath velocity? No, physics? Where is that value? Oh, there it is. Yeah, it's underneath physics. Random size. Turn that all the way up. Well, let's go 0.9. There we go. That gives it a little bit more randomness. And then the actual size of them themselves, you can sort of tweak them down to be, something like that. The trouble is like, I don't know, I want there to be some big ones. So I'm going to try something. Normally, I just have 2 particle settings, but I'll try this. I'm going to use a children particle like this. I'll set it to interpolated, actually. And then, for the length of them, let's set that to 0.5, but I'll set a threshold of 0.1, which means that some of them should be big. Actually, let's go smaller. 0.2. There we go. So some of the rocks are now big, and then 10% of them are remaining their original size. So, yeah. Okay, so we've now got a lot more rocks than we had possibly intended. Although, actually, no, that does actually look like the right amount. It's just really slow in the viewport. So I'm going to set this to 10% here, which if that happens, it's, you know, it's annoying. 20%? Oh, come on. I don't know why Blender doesn't fix itself. Come on. Why does it do that? It's supposed to be showing 50% of the particles in their original places. But evidently, that's difficult. Use modifier stack. Come on. Alright, well what I'll do instead is I'll set the display number to be 1, and I'll set this to be 100. Alright, there we go. I mean, it got the basic sort of effect. It's just annoying that doesn't work. Okay, so let's give this a render now. I think I might be able to do it on my GPU, depending on how much memory those rocks have used. Alright, let's have a look. I'll set the tile size to 256. Make sure you save, and then let's give it a render. Okay, so there we go. That is looking pretty cool so far. So yeah, in the background you can see that the scale of the rocks really looks nice. It's sort of, yeah, it definitely looks like a real rocky environment. Towards the front though, some of the rocks looks a little bit bare. Like there should be pebbles basically everywhere, in the foreground especially. And yeah, I'm not too happy with the control, like that little hack that I decided to do just to see if it would work. I'm not too happy with these children because it doesn't give you as much control over the little ones. So what I'll do is I'll actually make 2 particle systems. So this one will make the small rocks, and I'll set the size of those to be, where is the size again? There we go. Down here, I'll set that to be about 0.1. And I'll just make sure the smallest size it can be is about half. Otherwise, they sort of disappear into almost nothingness. Okay, so these ones will be called the small rocks. I'm going to duplicate that, select it again, then click the 2 next to it, and these will be the medium rocks. Okay, and make sure that I'm using a different seed value. I am, the seed value there. Otherwise, you have them over the top of each other, which is not good. And so the thing I'm going to change for this is just increase the size of these ones. So we want less of these. So I don't know if that's not enough, too many, all right? And I want more of the tiny rocks across the surface. So more tiny rocks, some medium rocks in there. Yeah, okay, let's see how this looks now. Okay, so the rendering is coming through now. And I think it, okay, so I've got more control of it. Now I can decide how many medium or small ones I want. But the small ones are, how could I say it? I don't know, I mean, they actually kind of look too detailed even to be small ones. So what I'll do is I'll use a separate type of rock for these small ones down here, which is what I actually did for my final one. But I wanted to try and conserve memory for this tutorial. But yeah, it seems like basically, yeah, the scale of these rocks here, basically they got a lot of detail, a lot of tiny crevices and things like that. And although you can tweak the scale a little bit, it's just too detailed for something of this scale. So they start to look a little bit too detailed down there. So what I'll do instead is I'm going to create a separate particle group. So I'll add these in here. I'm going to go to File, Append. And the ones that we're going to use are the volcanic type down here. Now these are a specific small type of rock right here. Load them in. I'll show you what they look like. Dun, 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 dun. So they look like that. So they're a lot smoother, and I think they suit more of a sort of pebble-ish sized sort of rock. So those are the ones that we will go with. So just like the medium rocks, we have to rotate them by 90 degrees. Make sure I'm not selecting the sun as well. There we go. I'll go back to my Mars landscape here. Select the ground surface. And I'm just going to switch out the small rocks with that new particle system. Sorry, with the new group, new volcanic group. There we go. Now they're a little tinier, so I'll have to increase the size here. There we go. Okay, that looks pretty good. Now, if you were worried about the density of it, like there's too many pebbles way in the background perhaps, and there's not enough towards the foreground, you can use a trick that I've done in some other tutorials, which is to basically, oh no, I hit Shift Z. Oh, I can exit. Aha, good. Which is to do this. So if you go, first of all, add a new vertex group right here, and then hit Control Tab. This puts you in weight paint mode. Then you can take a weight gradient and use that, which, hang on, let's do that again. Okay, so something sort of like that. And then if you go back to your particles over here, let's bring in these particles. So this is what it looks like currently. So they're all distributed evenly. But if you use that weight gradient now underneath vertex groups, if you use that, you should get more in the foreground and less towards the background there. So a slight effect, but I think generally I just need to increase the number of these because overall I don't think there are enough for this Mars scene. Just doesn't quite look suitable enough. But that's a lot. I think that should actually look pretty good now. Okay. Yeah, let's bring in the medium rocks. Things start to go very slow. All right, let's make the size. Okay, so I'm increasing the random size for these medium rocks. Try and make them a little bit, you get some smaller ones in there as well. And I'll just increase the size of them just very slightly. Give it a save, and let's see how this looks now. All right, there we go. That looks a lot nicer. A lot of rocks, and it really is starting to look like a real scene just because of the sheer volume of the rocks here. Now, there is one glaring problem with this, which I'm sure you have spotted, and that is that the rocks do not look like they're a part of the scene. They have a completely different color to the ground. So for that, we need to do something that, yeah, I had to basically learn for this specific scene. And that is we're going to basically add we're going to alter the material for the rock so that it looks as though where the rock meets the ground, it has like a gradient effect where it's like, it's almost the color of the ground and then it goes up and you start to see the real color of the rock, which is basically what you see when you have a look at real photos from Mars. Like you can see this rock here, like it's a gradient effect going up there. And that's just caused by, you know, years and years of sand and dust and things brushing against it. The tip is going to be the last thing to get buried in it. So, yeah, you can see it really clearly there. So that is what we're going to do. And that is going to really, really lift and improve the overall scene drastically. It's actually almost like, yeah, it's pretty stunning when you see the difference. So let's do that now. Let's do that right now. So, let's go to the layer with our rocks on it, and just so that we can focus, I'll just pick one rock, okay? I feel like I'm in like an upside down world here. Shout out to the Stranger Things. Great show. Okay, so I'm just going to move this to its own layer, and I'm just going to make this one rotated the right way up so that I don't feel tripped out. Okay, so just focusing on this rock here. Yeah, we're going to make it so it looks like the dust is sort of starting at the bottom and working its way up. So jumping over to the node editor here. So this is the, you know, this is inside Rock Essential. I mean, it's just all the maps, the color maps, the normal maps, that kind of thing feeding into this one shader here. So right here between there and there is where we can add in our dust shader. So what I'm going to do is start by adding in a mix shader. Let me drop this in. And just so that we can see what's going on, just go there. Okay. So what I'll do is underneath here, add in a diffuse shader, and it's diffused because it is dirt, and dirt generally doesn't have that much of a reflection, even though we talked about in the PBR tutorial that everything has reflection. Just for the sake of simplicity, we're making it diffuse. And so this basically here, so this controls whether we're looking at the completely raw rock shader, and this controls whether we're looking at the dirt. So what we can do is we can add in a something here to control which parts of it are dirt, which parts of it are going to be the rock. So for that, we're going to use a gradient texture right here. So if we have a look at just this, you can see the effect that it's doing. It's a gradient texture. Now by default, it does it from left to right or right to left, whichever way you look at it. So we're going to change that by adding in, first of all, a texture coordinate node, and then a mapping node, just like what you do if you were changing the scale of a texture. Now I'm going to take the generated output, not the UV, because yeah, I'll show you in a second. And then we'll drag this into the gradient texture input right there. Now here, this is going to allow us to adjust the rotation of it in relation to the the generated object, so not the UV. So this, the object itself, all right? So if we set this to 90, you'll see what it's doing. So now it's completely 90 degrees sideways, so white up there and dark down there. Now it should actually be flipped. Now you'd think that if you just make this the opposite, it doesn't do that for whatever reason. I don't know, maybe it's a mathematical equation that's actually controlling this rotation, but to me, I always find it really difficult to understand how to actually tweak these things. It just seems so unartistic friendly. I never know how to do it. But anyways, so instead of that, we're just going to cheat and we're going to add in an invert node, which does the exact same thing. So now it's black at the top and white at the bottom. So the white is going to be the dust, okay? The dirt, dust, whatever you call it. I guess on Mars it's all dirt, right? Because dust means like old skin particles. I don't know. Anyways, so if we just have a look at this now, let's, if we power this, so drag that and put that into the factor input of the mix shader. Let's make this a bright pink color so we can actually see the effect as it's happening. You can see what's going on right there. Let's just have a look. Is that accurate? Okay, so it's a little weird. So what I'll do is I'll add in, I was going to do this anyway, a math node in here and set this to power. And if we turn this up, increase it, it'll sort of turn that value down. I don't know, power it's sort of like one of my new things that I've learned. It's like, I don't know, it can adjust grayscales a lot better than color ramps and other things can. I don't know how it particularly works. I asked my dad on the weekend, what does the power mathematical equation means? And I got a very long-winded answer, and I have to be honest, I sort of tuned out a bit. Bit into it. But anyways, so you can see, okay, now you can see it a lot better. Okay, so at the top, it's showing mostly just the raw texture, and then down here, it's this pink, which means, of course, when we change this to be the actual Mars soil, it'll make a lot of sense. Now, one thing as well is, like, if you have a look at reference photos of the dust, if I bring those up, it's not just, you know, along the bottom like a gradient. It's also getting caught in the crevices of the rock. So like inside there, little tiny crevices and whatever else. Maybe that's not the best photo, but you get the idea. So we're gonna have some fun with that as well. So let's try and make it so that the dust goes inside the crevices. So this is gonna be the gradient sort of effect, and on top of that, we're gonna add in that crevice effect. So to do that, let's add another node up here, and this one's going to be the geometry node. And of all these little ones here, we're going to use the bottom one, which is pointiness, which is a relatively new feature for Blender. And it highlights, like, you know, if looking at an object like this, the parts that are pointy. So again, if we just steal our little power value here, you can see the effect as it's happening quite well there. Okay. Now, we want the white to collect inside the crevice area. So it's currently, we want the opposite of what the pointiness is. So we're going to add in another, I'll just duplicate this one, another invert node. So now it's collecting in there. So if we turn up this power value, you can see that it's now just collecting inside wherever the crevices are on our rock here. And by the way, this doesn't look like much in this resolution, but if we turn up the subsurf of the rock, which I guess I should have done at the start, you can see the effect a lot better. So it's actually physically collecting inside the crevices there, which is nice. Great. So what we'll do is basically just drop it, take this and combine it down here with a mix RGB node. So we're just mixing the current black and white value here with this black and white value. So I'll take that, put that into the top input there. I'll just put it in the bottom input. I'll set this to screen. Let's have a look at that. And now we can control how much of that we actually want to show through, like that. Now the other thing is like it's like slightly gray all over, which is actually good. We don't want it to be solid black anywhere, because we do want the rocks to look as though at least every single part of it has at least some form of tiny amount of dirt on it. So that's what this gray is going to it's going to do. So if we have a look at this, you can see the effect there. Again, it's hot pink, but you get the idea. Now, one other thing as well, I was going to add this. So in between, okay, this is looking very confusing. I'll just move this around a little bit so it's a little bit easier to understand. But in between, so basically right here, like this gradient value, it's a little bit too harsh. Like it's a little bit too clean and perfect. So to give it a little bit more variation, I'm going to add a noise texture. Take the object output, look at this, okay, and I'll basically just take the dark values of that and combine it over the top of these. So I'll add a mix RGB node in here. No, it was supposed to be, oh, come on, there to there. Oh, come on. Oh, the bottom input, so take the factor. Yeah, the difference between the color for a noise texture and the factor underneath it is that color is color. Factor is just black and white. Yeah, a little random piece of useless information. I'll set this to multiply, and there we go. So now it's taking the dark value and applying it over the top of the white values. And if I turn that all the way up, you can see that it's now cutting into it more and more. And if you increase this, you would have more of the effect, or you could go the opposite way. It's really up to you. But that looks pretty good. So then we combine that with that, and we have that, and then we have that. So what I'm going to do is take all of this and all of this and our little fuse down there and just make one group out of it like that. Okay. And this we shall call it dirt. Just dirt. And the color, we'll tweak this later on, I'm sure, to sort of get it so that it matches the dirt correctly. Or I guess we could actually just do it right now, couldn't we? All right, let's do that. Let's load in the ground. Whoa, ho, ho. Whoa, Nelly. All right, turn off both particle systems. Where is it? There it is. Okay, so if that's positioned right there, essentially we just want to look at it and try and get the that dirt value so that they match, essentially. So let's try that. So turn down the value significantly, I guess. You know what I'll probably have to do? I think I'm going to have to increase the brightness of our diffused dirt here. Basically making that whole point I did about, you know, the true value of material is pretty pointless, but, you know, we gotta get through this tutorial. So, yeah. Okay, sort of like that. Okay, there we go. Right. Cool. So it's starting to look, okay, that looks pretty embedded into the soil. I mean, partly. We'll do something else later on which will make it look even more so, but that is pretty good. All right, so let me move this back to its original layer, which I believe was that one. Was it? No, it was the next one. 50-50 chance, wasn't it? All right. And actually, okay, so here's the thing. We've done it to this one rock here. The annoying thing about, well, it's one of the inevitable things, is that each one of these rocks is unique and it has its own unique texture and unique material, which means that if you want this dirt effect, you have to manually add it to each rock like that. So I can actually just delete this one because it's just a duplicate of that one down there. But now what we have to do with each one of these is add in this dirt node group. So I'll do a time lapse of this as well. And we'll do the same thing for the other rocks. And the last one. Ta-da! All right, so let's to check that this actually looks correct, I'm just going to do a quick preview now. And look at that. Red on the bottom, normal colored on the top. And then let's load in these other guys. Red on the bottom, normal-ish on the top. Yay! Okay, cool. So now let's have a look. Hopefully, all things done correctly, the render should come out a lot nicer now. Let's see how it goes. All right, there we are. So this is the before, and then this is the after. Now we changed the, base dirt color as well, but I think you'd agree that it does look a little bit more embedded into it. However, it's not quite enough, especially these smaller stones down here, because, and it's one of the downsides, I guess, is that the smaller stones are, technically, if you've got a small stone next to this big stone, and you can see the gradients halfway up the big stone, then really this smaller stone down here should be completely covered. So that's, I was hoping we wouldn't have to do it. I just thought maybe the effect would work itself, but we can fix that very quickly with the by adding another shader on top of these small ones. But as well as that, I want to add in just more exaggeration on that crevice effect, because it's kind of hard to see any dirt on top. So like I mentioned, you do want it to look as though every part of the rock has got some amount of dirt on it. So let's just focus on, what's an interesting one? This one. Okay. So inside this node group here, the good thing is that because it's a shared node group, you only have to do this once, and it should reflect on all of the others as well. And it's actually hard to see. Let's move it to its own layer. Okay, and then let's have a look at it with the sun lamp. Okay, because I want to have a look with the sun lamp. All right. I guess I should make it more like that so we can see it better. Okay, there we go. So having a look at that, let's turn the, which one of these is it? Gradient. This one, the pointiness. Let's turn that down. There we go. So turning it down has a more of an exaggerated effect. Okay, so it just makes like the dirt spread out a little bit more essentially. Okay, so something like that. I think that should look a little bit more a part of the actual scene. Okay, so take that guy. Let's rotate him back to where he was. And I'll do another render with this. We might have to tweak those small stones after it again anyway, but let's just take a look with that. Much better. Okay, so this is what we started with before. Then we added in the gradient effect, and then this is with the exaggerated crevice effect. And I think you can see it's starting to look a little bit like Mars. Yay! Cool. So we have made this tutorial long enough as it is. So we're going to jump into part 2 next, where you will learn how to make the rocks look even more embedded into the soil by making the ground sort of pool around each individual rock, which is a really cool trick. We're going to be placing these individual huge rocks to create something up on the hill around our little astronaut. And then as well as that, we're going to be working on the background and then doing the final composite as well to finish off. So join me now in part 2 by clicking on your screen now.